Welcome to the 2015 National Youth Storytelling Showcase. I am Nanette Watts. I am the director of this program and your host for the evening. We have 10 youth storytellers. This year, they all seem to come from some of the same nests around the country of strong storytelling. We have some storytellers from Utah, we have some storytellers from Florida, and we have some storytellers from Texas. They make up the core of our strength this year in youth storytelling. Our first storyteller comes from Florida. Shannon Adams is in the 6th grade. Please give her a round of applause. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Shannon Adams, and I am going to tell you the story of Una and the Giant, a folktale from Ireland. Long ago in Ireland, there lived giants. Boom, 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 they walked across the land. Finn McCool was one of the most famous giants, with his shock of white hair and his magic thumb that could help him see what was going on anywhere in the world. He lived way up on Knockmany Hill with his wife Una, who was as beautiful as she was smart. One day, Cuchulainn came running up the path to Knockmany Hill, threw open the door, and ran inside yelling, "Una, Cuchulainn has found out where we live. He's coming after me." Is that so? And just who is this Cuchulainn? Only the biggest, meanest giant there is. He means to pulverize me with his huge fists. Just for fun. With my magic thumb, I always know when he's coming and can get away. But now that he's found out where we live, there'll be no stopping him. How long before he arrives? He'll be here at about 3 o'clock, and he means to squash me flat as a pancake. Whatever shall I do? Hush now, just do what I say, and everything will work out fine. Right away, Una began baking a batch of 6 cakes. 3 of them she made just as usual, but she put large stones in the other 3. Then she had Finn get into a big wicker cradle. She covered him with a blanket and put a lace cap on his head. There, now you can just stay there and pretend to be a baby. You can suck your thumb and you'll know exactly what I'm thinking and what I want you to do. Just tell me one thing. Where does this giant keep his strength? Why, in the little finger of his right hand. Una nodded and sat down to wait for Cuchulainn. At exactly 3 o'clock, Cuchulainn pounded on the door. Bam, bam, bam! Is this the house of Finn McCool? Why, it is. Come in and sit you down. So Cuchulainn came inside, sat down in Finn's chair, boom, and looked around. That's a fine baby you got there. Would his father be home by any chance? I'm afraid not. He said something about going to catch a little fellow called Cuchulainn. I'm sure he won't be gone long. Well, I'm Cuchulainn, and I'm trying to catch your husband. So you're Cuchulainn. Well, you still have time to get away before Finn comes home. Me run from him, it's him that'll be running from me. I think you've got it wrong. Have you seen my husband? He's as hard as rock and swift as the wind. Speaking of wind, could you turn the house around? The wind is shifting. Turn the house around. That's what Finn always does when the wind blows from the east. So Cuchulainn went outside, looked at the house, and clicked the little finger of his right hand 3 times. Then he seized the house around the middle and turned it right around. Inside, Finn's teeth chattered with fright, but Una merely shushed him, and when Cuchulainn came back inside, she thanked him as though he had done the most ordinary thing. Would you like some tea and cakes? Una made a large pot of tea and offered Cuchulainn one of the stony cakes. He took one bite. Yow! He spat out a tooth. What kind of cake is this? It's as hard as stone. That's Finn's favorite cake, but perhaps it's too much for you. Here, try this one. It's a bit softer. He took one bite. Yow! He spat out 2 more teeth. Then Finn sucked his thumb and knew exactly what Una wanted him to do. He let out the loudest shout ever heard in that part of Ireland. Wah! Oh, now you've gone and done it. You've woken him up. Then Finn yelled, "Cakes!" at the top of his lungs. "Aw, just you eat that," Una said, and offered Finn, one of the non-stony cakes. Cuchulainn watched in horror as the baby ate every last crumb of the cake. "I think I'll be going," he said, "to tell your husband that I'm sorry I missed him, and congratulations to you both on a bonny baby. Oh, he's a wonderful child. Come and take a proper look," Una said, and pulled back the blanket covering Finn. Finn yelled and kicked his feet in the air for all he was worth. "What a mighty pair of legs he has on him." "Yes, and his teeth are coming through quite nicely. Just you feel them." Thinking he would please her and make his escape before her horrible husband came home, Cuchulainn stuck his little finger in the baby's mouth. Quick as a flash, Finn bit off the finger. "How!" As he was howling, Cuchulainn's strength began to fade. He got smaller. How! And smaller. Ooh! And smaller. Ee! Until he was smaller than the cakes Una had made. Una and Finn looked down at the little giant and smiled. Cuchulainn took one look up at both of them and fled out of the house and down the hill. What happened next, I can't say, because Cuchulainn was never heard from again in Ireland. As for Finn McCool, he thanked his brave and clever wife and ate another of her fine cakes. The end.
Our next storyteller comes to us from Utah. She is in the 8th grade, 9th grade. When they tried out for this or submitted their papers, they were a whole grade younger. So everything I tell you tonight will be one grade off. Please welcome Lily Walker, who also, besides storytelling, loves music, dance, theater. Lily.
My mom unfolded the cloth, spread it out, and admired the fine pattern, weave, and texture. But all I really cared about was that it was bright pink. Have you ever witnessed the magic that happens when you take that piece of cloth, that piece of fabric, and transform it into something amazing? My mom has that magic. Ever since I was a little girl, I'd watch her take that piece of fabric and transform it into just about anything. "Mom, can you make me a pair of shorts?" I handed her the softest pink and white polka dot fabric. "Sure," she said, and she took it and walked over to the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. The magic happened, and there would be my shorts. As I slipped my legs in, the fit, perfect. "Mom, can you make me a shirt?" I handed her brightly colored striped fabric. She took it and walked over to the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. The magic happened, and there would be my shirt. As I slipped my head in, it fit. Perfect. "You look just like a rainbow," my mom said. "Mom, I would like to be a princess. Can you make me a princess dress?" I handed her dark, rich pink satin. She took it and walked over to the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. The magic happened, and there would be my dress. Soon others began to hear about my mother's magic. The neighborhood boy came over with his blanket. He had had it ever since he was a little kid. You could tell this blanket was well loved. It had literally been loved to pieces. "Hi, this is my blanket, and I've had it since, well, forever. My mom says it's too old and needs to be thrown away. Can you fix it?" "Sure," my mom said, and she walked over to the sewing machine. The sewing machine goes, A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. My mom handed the boy his blanket, and he snuggled it up to his face. The little girl next door came over with her stuffed animal cat. "The stuffing's coming right out. Can you fix it, please?" she asked. My mom took it over to the sewing machine. The sewing machine goes, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. The magic happened. "Fluffy's better," the girl giggled. One day I came home from school to hear the a-rat-a-tat of my mother's sewing machine. I looked over and saw a pile of beautiful dresses. "Are these for me?" "No," my mom answered. Even little girls in Africa with no dresses had heard about my mother's magic. Sometimes my mom would even take me to the fabric store where I could pick out any fabric I wanted to be magically transformed into a dress. And there it was. Those birds needed to fly. As my mom buttoned up the last button, I looked in the mirror. "Are you ready?" And then I twirled and twirled and twirled. Those birds took flight. I decided I was going to try some of my own magic. I got my pink shorts and placed them on some other fabric, and then grabbed out the scissors. Snip, snip, snip. I made a pattern. I took it over to the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat-a-tat-tat-tat. That sewing machine was going 100 miles per hour. I almost lost a finger. When I tried on the shorts, one leg was way longer than the other, and they kept sliding off my waist. I decided I was going to make a shirt. That sounded much easier. I grabbed my rainbow shirt and made a pattern. Snip, snip, snip. I put the pattern by the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat, grind. My shirt was being sucked into the sewing machine. The sewing machine was trying to eat my shirt. When I tried it on, my arm got stuck. "Help! Help!" My mom had to cut me out of my creation. Finally, I decided I was going to make a skirt. I got my pattern and placed it on the sewing machine. A-rat-a-tat, clunk, 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 snap. I have just broken my mother's sewing machine. There's going to be no more magic. There might be no more me. I'm going to be locked in my room forever. Well, as it just so happens to turn out, sewing machine needles are replaceable. Whoever thought of that was a genius. But I wasn't going to sew again. I knew I had no magic in me. Everything I tried never worked out. I was never going to sew again. The next time I was left in charge, my little sister came up to me. She was holding some fabric. It was yellow with red dots. "Can you make a skirt for my doll, please?" "No, I can't do it. I don't have any magic in me." "Please, please, 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 please." And then she grabbed my hand and led me over to the sewing machine. I sat down, and she began to chant, "A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat." I joined in. "A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat. I need all your help. A-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat, a-rat-a-tat-tat." The magic happened. As I handed the skirt to my little sister, she slid it on her doll, and it fit perfect. As I was watching my little sister play with her doll, I thought, maybe magic has something to do with service. And that a-rat-a-tat sounds an awful lot like love. I guess I do have a little magic in me after all. And you know what? So do you.
Our next storyteller comes all the way from Texas. He loves to play Texas-sized golf. His name is Nicholas Campos. Please give him a big round of applause. He is in the 6th grade.
The story I'm going to tell y'all today is the story of the giant cockroaches of Clear Lake Shores by Jay Staley. For those of y'all who don't know where Clear Lake Shores is, it's an island south of Houston. Now, a couple weeks back, I was down at City Hall just looking through the city scrapbook, and it was just as I'd suspicioned. It's our city's 25th anniversary, and sure enough, this has been the strangest year in city history. It all started when George Keebler was elected mayor of Clear Lake Shores in a write-in campaign. On account of the only candidate, Ray Gardner, had irritated and annoyed nearly everyone on the island. Now, this was the first time a write-in candidate had ever won an election in Galveston County. But this was just the beginning of our problems. Now, I don't know. My mother says George Keebler's related to those Keebler elves. You know, the ones that make the cookies? Now, nobody knows where those roaches came from. Now, let me get something straight. We live on the waters by the steamy Gulf Coast, so we've always had roaches, but nothing like these. These roaches were 6, 8, 10 inches long, and only on the island. It was lucky for us they weren't carnivores. Though Miss Henderson claims a group of them carried away her cat one morning in broad daylight. Now, at first, the city contracted with Big Tex Pest Control, but they decided the problem was too big for them to handle. The state health department tried to intervene, but they decided to turn it over to Parks and Wildlife. Parks and Wildlife sent out a ranger. He stayed on the island for about 5 minutes. He left after one look at those roaches, fear in his eyes. Now, the city had offered a $10,000 reward for anyone who could rid the island of its roaches. And crazy nuts came out of the woodwork just as thick as the bugs themselves. One genius had an idea for a roach hotel, multi-story, at the corner of Clear Lake Drive and Forest. The council rejected it because it didn't meet the building code. Another entrepreneur had a plan that called for a limited evacuation of the island and several tons of dynamite brought in by barge. The mayor cast a deciding vote against that plan. Now, by the end of June, the city was desperate, and on the 2nd of July, at the 15th emergency session of the city council, a pale stranger walked through the door and quietly announced that he could rid the city of its roaches. Now, the stranger, he had a quiet and unsettling manner. Now, you see, everything has a tone, a pitch, or a combination of tones and pitches that can be used to gain complete control. Boy, if that works, we ain't gonna give you $10,000, we'll give you $100,000. And with that, the stranger was listening. Oh yeah, sort of like Winston Banner's new flea collar that he got for his dog. Says the fleas can't tolerate the sound it gives off. Say it's too high a frequency for us to hear. Yes, it works sort of like that. And with that, the stranger pulled out a little flute from his pocket and began to play. At first, I expected to hear no sound at all. But to my surprise, a little tune came out, and a catchy little tune at that. It was short, with kind of a jazzy Latin rhythm. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do. He played that tune over and over and over again. And when we went outside, we thought we heard castanets. But it turned out to be the sound of little cockroach feet on the pavement, coming in swarms right down Clear Lake Boulevard. Thousands of them, maybe millions. Now the stranger, he grabbed Buzz Larrymore's oldest boy, and they got into a rowboat and started paddling out into the bay. All those roaches just following him. And when those roaches hit the water, well, those roaches kept swimming like crazy toward that rowboat. Once they'd gotten well out into the bay, the stranger suddenly dropped the flute from his lips, and almost as one, all those roaches sank into the bay. Now, the wave from all those sinking bugs, it almost capsized the boat. Back at City Hall, the council had figured that the $100,000 they'd promised that stranger would force the city to go bankrupt. So they decided to offer him the $10,000 originally budgeted. Take it or leave it. Now the stranger, he quietly insisted that in Texas, more than any place in the cosmos, a deal is a deal, and I wish to be given my full $100,000, so I may depart quietly and without incident. We appreciate your help, but $10,000 is all we can afford, said Mayor Keebler. And with that, the stranger turned his back and left. They'll be sorry, he said. That night, it was the first night in a while that I had got to walk my dog without hearing the sound of roaches crunching under my feet. And that's when I heard it. It was that stranger's flute playing a medley of the sweetest and loneliest country and western songs ever penned. It was three-chord heartbreak music at its best, and it sounded better than a Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings duet. Now I was just turning the corner, and I had just gotten to Bobby Ray's new house, and I saw his brand new Ford 3/4-ton pickup truck backing out of the driveway. But that pickup truck, it was backing out of the driveway without the engine running. That's when I noticed that that pickup truck didn't have no driver. That pickup truck was backing out of the driveway without no driver. After Bobby Ray's Ford went by, here came the Johnson Chevy, and then Councilman Blake's little import. It was pickup truck after pickup truck, all driverless, all heading towards that stranger's music. Now, I had just gotten to Bobby Ray's house, and I saw his pickup truck with the camper in the back. Bobby Ray's brother-in-law, Jesse Robbins, had been sleeping in the camper since early in the week, since he had insulted his sister's cooking. Nobody talks to my wife like that except me, Bobby Ray had hollered, and he had banished Jesse to the pickup camper. Now Jesse had probably figured that he was going to take him out in the dead of night and tell him never to come back. But when he opened the seal to talk to the driver, there wasn't nobody there. He lit out the back of that pickup truck in his boxer shorts and landed in a ditch. Evening, Jesse, I said as I turned the corner. Now, I was just staring at that line of trucks, and that's when I noticed that that stranger, still playing that country music, had climbed into the pickup truck at the head of the line, and almost as one, all those trucks headed off the island. At the very end of the procession was Mayor Keebler's old gold and white Dodge 1-ton. Now, I'm sure you heard about the investigation in the big city papers. Most folks figure the stranger was working with one of those car theft rings. You know, the ones that strip down cars and trucks and sell the parts. Darren Marge, my next-door neighbor, has a brother who works down at the docks. And he said that a freight had just unloaded $1 million worth of new Mercedes and left in a hurry, ahead of schedule, just after the stranger had left the island. It was supposed to be empty, but Darren Marge's brother said it was riding suspiciously low in the water. Now, whatever happened to those pickup trucks, we'll never know. But the police, they recovered one pickup truck, and that was Mayor Keebler's. Let's say that didn't do much to strengthen his political base. Now, I was over at my mother's house a couple nights ago, and we were talking about the case, and she told me her theory. It was his cousins. Whose cousins, I asked? The mayor's. Well, what about them? It was his cousins, the elves. You know, the ones that make the cookies. They're the ones that got the old man's truck back. And you know what? She might be right. This has been the strangest year in city history. I hate to know what happened next.
Thank you, Nicholas. Our next storyteller comes from Florida. Her name is Molly Ellis, and I'm guessing that she is now in the 10th grade. Please welcome Molly.
This story was retold by Margaret Reed MacDonald and in Shake It Up Tales. Housework is something that needs to be done, and you either love it or hate it, or you hire a cleaning service. But a long time ago, there was no Molly maid to help you out. So, this is a Celtic folktale about the little old woman who hated housework. There once was a little old woman who hated housework. Every morning she would get up and do the chores. She would make her bed, do the dishes, and sweep the floor. And she hated it. One day she was doing her usual routine, and she started to grumble. Work, work, work. How I hate it, hate it, hate it. Just then, there was a knock at the door. The little woman opened the door, and in bustled a little fairy who pushed the woman aside, grabbed the covers, and started doing the bed. Flumpity, 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 flump. The woman was so excited. Well, I guess I'll just do the dishes. And she started doing the dishes. But then she started to grumble. Work, work, work. How I hate it, hate it, hate it. And then another knock at the door. Open the door, you shall work no more. And the little woman opened the door, and in came another little fairy who pushed the woman aside, grabbed the dishes, and started doing them. Clankety, 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 clank. Well, I guess I'll just sweep the floors, said the little woman. So she grabbed the broom and started sweeping. But then she started to grumble again. Work, work, work. How I hate it, hate it, hate it. And another knock at the door. Open the door and you shall work no more. And once again, the little woman opened the door, and another little fairy came in, pushed the woman aside, grabbed the broom, and started sweeping. Swishity, 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 swish. No work. The woman was happy, but then she started to get bored. Here, let me help with this. Sit down, you'll work no more. Here, can I help with the sit down, you'll work no more. Let me help with the sit down, you'll work no more. Everything started getting louder and louder. Flumpity, flumpity, flump, clickety, clackety, click, swishity, swishity, swish. And it got louder and louder and louder until the little woman thought she couldn't take it anymore. And then it stopped. Switch places. And all the fairies switched places and started doing their jobs again. Flumpity, flumpity, flump, clankety, clankety, clank, swishity, swishity, swish. Flumpity, flumpity, flump, clankety, clankety, clank, swishity, swishity, swish. And it just kept getting louder and louder and louder, and the little woman couldn't take it anymore. She thought her head was gonna explode, and then it stopped again. Maybe it was done for switch places, and all the fairies switched places again. And it got even louder. Flumpity, flumpity, flump, clankety, clankety, clank, swishity, swishity, swish, flumpity, flumpity, flump, clankety, clankety, clank, swishity, swishity, swish. And she couldn't take it. She didn't know what to do. Who could she go to for help? And then she remembered the wise woman up the hill. She ran up the hill and asked her for help. Wise woman, please, I need your help. My house is overrun with fairies. You didn't let them in, did you? Well, yes. You weren't grumbling, were you? Well, yes. Then you let them in. You have to get them out. I will tell you how to. What you need to do is first, you need to tell them that the hill's on fire. They'll be worried for their children and they'll rush out. Then, second, you need to lock the door. And third, you need to take everything and flip it upside down. You have to do this very quickly and do not unlock the door. So the little old woman did as she was told, went down the hill.
The hill is on fire! The hill is on fire!
Oh no, our children, the fairies yelled, and they rushed out to save them. The little old woman rushed inside, locked the door, took the covers, twisted them all up, took the dishes, turned them upside down, took the broom and flipped it up. And before she could barely finish, there was a knock at the door. Open the door and you shall work no more. The little old woman wouldn't move. Open the door and you shall work no more. Still, the little old woman wouldn't move. Fine, covers, come open the door for us. We can't. We're all twisted up. I know. Dishes, come open the door for us. We can't. We're turned upside down. Wait, broom, come open the door. I can't. I'm upside down. Well, then your luck is gone. We shall work no more. And with that, the fairies left. Quiet. The little old woman smoothed out the covers and turned the dishes back over and flipped the broom back up. And as she did all this, she began to grumble again. Work, work, work. How I love it, love it, love it.
We have another storyteller who has joined us from Texas tonight. Her name is Daniela Sala. She is in the 5th grade. I'm getting good at this. She is in the 5th grade, and she really loves international cooking. I don't think you'll hear that in her story tonight, but I wanted you to be aware of where the goods are. Please welcome Daniela.
This is a bilingual story by New Mexican storyteller Joe Hayes. El terrible tragadabas. The terrible tragadabas. Now, tragar means gobbling it up. A tragadabas means a gobble upper. Once upon a time, there was an abuelita, a grandmother, who had 3 grandchildren. The smallest was pequeñita, the middle child was mediana, and the big child was grandota. The 3 grandchildren helped abuelita do little chores around the house. One day, abuelita found some holes in the children's socks, so she gave each of them their socks back to sew them back up. Pequeñita finished first. Abuelita, ya acabé, I'm finished. Oh, what a good girl you are. Qué niña tan buena eres. Abuelita gave Pequeñita some money to buy little cakes and honey, tortitas y miel, and off she skipped to the store. When she arrived at the store was dark. The door was closed. She knocked on the door. Who is it? Soy Pequeñita. Pequeñita, Pequeñita, don't come inside. I am the tragadabas. Now swallow you alive. Tragadabas. What is a tragadabas? She didn't know what a tragadabas was. So she opened the door. She walked inside, and out jumped the tragadabas. She ran out of store, over the hill, and up to a tall branch on the big green tree. Meanwhile, back at Abuelita's house, Mediana just finished her socks. Abuelita, ya acabé, I'm finished. Oh, what a good girl you are. Qué niña tan buena eres. Abuelita gave Mediana her money to buy little cakes and honey, tortitas y miel, and off she skipped to the store. When she arrived at the store was dark. The door was closed. She knocked on the door. ¿Quién es? Soy Mediana. Mediana. No entres para acá, que soy el tragadabas y te voy a tragar. Tragadabas. ¿Qué es un tragadabas? She didn't know what a tragadabas was. So she opens the door. She walked inside. She turned left, and out jumped the tragadabas. She ran out of the store, over the hill, and up to a taller branch on the big green tree. Meanwhile, back at Abuelita's house, Granota just finished her socks. Abuelita, ya acabé, I'm finished. Oh, what a good girl you are. Qué niña tan buena eres. Abuelita gave Grandota her money to buy a little cakes and honey, tortitas sin miel, and off she skipped to the store. When she arrived at the store was dark. The door was closed. She knocked on the door. ¿Quién es? Soy Grandota. Grandota. No entres para acá, que soy el tragadabas y te voy a tragar. Tragadabas. ¿Qué es un tragadabas? She didn't know what a tragadabas was. So she opens the door. She walked inside. Out jumped the tragadabas. She ran out of store, over a hill, and up to the tallest branch on the big green tree. Meanwhile, back at Abuelita's house, Abuelita was really worried where the children went. They have gone for a really long time. I should go to the store to see why they're taking so long. And off she skipped walked to the store. When she arrived at the store was dark. The door was closed. She knocked on the door. ¿Quién es? Soy Abuelita. Abuelita, no entres para acá, que soy el tragadabas y te voy a tragar. ¡Ay, mis nietas! Abuelita knew what a tragadabas was. The tragadabas swallowed up my grandchildren. And she was walking back home, heartbroken. While she was walking home, she met a little bumblebee buzzing by.
¿Qué pasó? What's wrong, abuelita?
The tragadabas swallowed up my grandchildren.
Tragadabas? I am not afraid of a tragadabas.
And the bumblebee buzzed to the store. When he arrived at the store was dark. The door was closed. He knocked on the door. ¿Quién es?
I am a little bumblebee with a stinger on my rump. And when I start to sting, I'll really make you jump.
And with that, the bumblebee buzzed right into the store and started chasing the tragadabas. The tragadabas ran out of the store, over the hill, past the big green tree, out of the town, never to be seen again. And down from the tall branch on the big green tree came Pequeñita. And down from a taller branch on the big green tree came Mediana. And down from the tallest branch on the big green tree came Grandota. And on the tippy top of the big green tree came down the shopkeeper. And to celebrate that the tragadabas was gone forever, the shopkeeper invited everybody back to the store And guess what they had? That's right. Little cakes and honey, tortitas y miel.
We have a fantastic storyteller for you, like all of the others tonight, who comes from the great wide open spaces. I think they're wide and open. I've never been there, but I hear that they are. Texas. He is in the 7th grade. I should have known by now. 7th grade from Texas. He loves, in his spare time, anything to do with computers and computer programming. That's what you need to know. Please welcome Ben Wilson.
All I wanted was a pudding snack. So I did the only thing a kid could do. Mom, can I have a pudding snack? I'm busy. Go ask your father. So I called my dog Lily and I went to go find my dad. Lily is the dumbest little white fluff ball you will ever meet. Bless her little heart. That dog is so dumb.
How dumb is she?
That dog is so dumb.
How dumb is she?
Well, she is so dumb that her favorite dessert is Feces Pieces from the cat box. That dog is so dumb.
How dumb is she?
She is so dumb that every time she gets a drink of water, she gets a concussion from the toilet seat hitting her in the head. Well, anyways, Lily is really my sister Emily's dog, but Emily always has her face in her phone, texting away, and she doesn't have time for Lily. Hey, Emily, do you know where Dad is? IDK, dork, which is text talk for I don't know, awesome little brother. But Emily and I both knew there was only one place my dad could be. Out in the garage organizing his collection. My dad loves to collect things. Dad? No. Pudding snack? No. Please, for the last time, no. Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes. I paced up and down the hallway. 5 minutes seemed like forever. So I took a second to admire the Wilson Wall of Fame. That's where everyone in my family shows off all their awards. Everyone has one hanging up on the wall except for my mom. She doesn't have an award because she has her heart set on the big daddy of all the awards, the Nobel Prize. She works nonstop on her wacky inventions, but so far, her solar-powered flashlight doesn't work in the dark. Her super mosquito repellent attracts bees. And her miracle hair growing formula only works on feet. But everyone else's award is there, though. Even Lily. Lily has the Pet Smart, Not So Smart, Dumbest Dog Award. My sister holds the Texas Texting Tornado Champion 2 times running, but that's only because of her implant. You see, it's my mom's latest invention. She surgically implanted a texting device into the palm of Emily's hand. She calls it the MyPhone. And my dad holds the Guinness World Record for largest collection of edible lookalikes, which means he collects food that looks like other things. Of course, he's got the usual cornflakes that look like all 44 presidents, and a potato chip John Wayne, but out of all his collection, his most prized possession is a Fruit Loop that looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like a lifesaver. In my award, I'm the world's greatest grandson. I have a birthday card to prove it. And just then, a timer went off on the oven, and we all went to the kitchen to eat. We all got our plates ready, and we sat down at the table. That's when a normal family would start to say grace. But in my family, my dad makes us check our food to make sure it doesn't look like Elvis, monuments, or any of the 7 wonders of the world. After my dad's all clear, are we finally allowed to eat. But before I could even take my first bite, Lily jumped on the table and she scarfed up a chicken breast in one gulp. We could tell she was in trouble by the way she was flailing around on the table, knocking things over left and right. She drenched Emily in iced tea and yahoo! Hot gravy in my dad's lap. Everyone was yelling, "Lily's choking! She's not breathing! She's turning blue!" And even Emily, she was texting in all caps. Finally, my dad just scooped Lily off the table and he slammed her on the ground as hard as he could. It turns out that's how you perform the doggy Heimlich maneuver. And that chicken, it shot out of her throat and it went clear across the room. My dad ran to the chicken. Eureka! It's Australia! And he ran off to the garage to go file it away in his collection. But even though the chicken was out, Lily still wasn't breathing, and Emily was losing it. She was still soaked with iced tea, and sparks were starting to shoot out from her implant. She reached down to grab Lily, and zap! The dog shot 3 feet in the air, and she landed on her feet running, straight to the cat box for dessert. Emily, are you okay? You don't look so good. My name is Siri. How may I help you? Mom, I think your my phone just turned Emily into Siri. But that's when things got really crazy. Emily's eyes were glowing, and they were spinning faster and faster. Her hair was floating above her head, crackling with electricity, and showers of sparks were shooting out from her implant. The lights were flickering, the microwave turned on, the toaster popped, and then everything went black. Don't worry, guys, I have my solar-powered flashlight. Oh, man! Fire! The sparks from Emily's hand had caught the curtains on fire, and flames filled the room. The house is on fire. We have to get out. No, we have to search for Lily. Searching the web for Lily. Smoke was blinding me. I was crawling on the floor. Lily! Lily! Oh, wait, I got her paw. Son, that's my big toe. Mom's hair cream formula really does work. Sorry, Dad. We found Lily and we all ran out to the street. But even in the dark, we could tell our neighbor Eddie was mad. What is wrong with you people? This is the 3rd time this month you have left the entire neighborhood in darkness. I can't even see to cook my tofu on the Barbie. I have 15 image results for tofu on Barbie dolls. That is disgusting. The fire from the house had spread to the garage, and my dad went crazy. He was screaming, "My popcorn kernel Papa Smurf popped! That kid is making a s'more with my John Lennon marshmallow! And it's my collection!" He was only able to save 1 box, and when he opened it up to see if it was okay, Lily jumped inside and she started to chow down. No, my Fruit Loop! I just heard my mom mutter under her breath, "At least I don't have to look at that dadgum wall of fame ever again." Well, that's not what she really said. I took the liberty of cleaning up her language for y'all, since this is family function. And after the fire, things have sort of gotten back to normal. Lily's still too dumb to die. And Emily's shorted out. She isn't Siri anymore. But she can still tell you the most direct route and all the show times at the nearest movie theater. My mom, she's given up inventing things. But now she wants to be a dog breeder. And she's going to start with Lily. And my dad, he doesn't cry as much anymore after all his therapy sessions. But he still can't walk down the cereal aisle at the local grocery store. And me? You know, after all of that, I never did get my pudding snack.
It's nice to hear that crazy things go on in other people's families too, don't you think? Does your dad really have that collection? Inquiring minds, we all want to know. Our next storyteller comes all the way from Utah. She is also in the 7th grade, and she loves music, dance, theater. Please welcome Lillian Gibb as she takes the stage.
I'm going to be telling the story Moustache by Margie Palatini. Moose had a problem. A horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moustache. Now, not a few spare hairs or a shy little stubble. No mere wandering whiskers on the upper lip of this moose. No, sirree. Moose had a big, bushy, bristly, mighty moustache. But a moustache that was a burly, surly, mangy mess. And it itched. A lot. Sure, he plucked and he tweezed. He even clipped, snipped, and teased. But his combs were still cowards. His brushes rebelled, and his scissors simply surrendered. Moose was in a frizzy tizzy. The moustache was completely crimping his style. He was a great hoofer, but he could barely bop and hip-hop with a moustache going flip-flop. He was a wonderful chef, but he simply could not flambe his soufflé with all those whiskers in the way. And he was a daring skier. But how could he downhill race with a mighty moustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what? After days and days of much serious thought, Moose had an idea. So he crossed some hair here, and he crossed some hair there, and he wrapped all that moustache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. But then the moustache got knotted and mangled and horribly tangled, and those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Moose could barely take a breath with all that moustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied, unwrapped, unknotted, and gulped in some fresh air. But now what? What? The miserable moose took hold of a hunk of hair, and he wrestled it, roped it, tethered, tied, tamed. Aha! A moose tail. Now that was so simple. That was so easy. That was, well, not so perfectly perfect. Talk about a dizzy do. Moose didn't know if he was coming or going. Backward, forward, this way, that. He couldn't tell which end was which. Moose had to bail on the tail. And so he thought, and he thought, and he thought some more. But no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother. A moustache sweater, too sweltering. Not. Poor Moose. His problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone. He didn't know what else to do. Then, call it fate, call it destiny. It's probably dumb luck. But one day, Moose tripped on his moustache and just didn't have time to duck. Oof! Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. And then they blinked. And they stared. And their hearts went thump-a-thump. She was a moose, with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous. Well, it was just plain old big. Hair after hair, piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls, a tower of swirling twists and twirls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb. Of course, Moose had to ask how she did what she did to get such a do. Miss Moose winked and then whispered, just a little glue. So she helped he fearlessly plunge a hoof into the fat pot of the gooey white goop, and carefully, oh so carefully, they glopped and they plopped and they pasted and they pressed and they coaxed and curled every truly unruly wayward whisker. Around and around they tweaked and twirled those horrible hairs, until Moose's once mangy mess was now a wondrous winding wave of marvelous moustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled a broad moosey smile. He felt so happy, so glad, just giddy with glee. He looked dashing and handsome. Moose gushed. Is that really me? With not a care for one hair, the moose pair boogied and bopped. They skied downhill, even uphill, and their cooking was hot, hot, hot. So, of course, it wasn't long after that Moose and his moustache and his beautiful bride fox-trotted and tangoed and waltzed down the aisle. Good hair days, bad hair days, they vowed to love and cherish, with hearts heaped with love and pots filled with goop. They both sighed, I do, glue, and promised never to part. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, and it stuck.
When I was on my way in, I saw a lot of traffic going to a baseball game. But our next storyteller has a lot of self-control. He is with us tonight, furthering his great love of story instead of being at the game that's just on the other side of the parking lot. Maybe I shouldn't tell him. He didn't know. He comes from Texas. Please welcome a 5th grader now, Jonathan Tubb.
Now, you've all probably heard a story about Jack. Well, anyway, the one I'm going to tell you today is called Jack in the Haunted House, and this version's by Elizabeth Ellis. One time, things got real bad at Jack's house. They got so bad that Jack and his mama thought they might starve to death. Finally, it was decided that Jack should go out in the world to seek his fortune. Jack's mama cried, but she thought it was the best thing to do. So she put a little food in a sack for Jack. Jack threw that sack across his back, headed down the big road. The first day or two, things weren't so bad. But on the 3rd day of Jack's trip, the sack was empty. So on the 4th day, so was Jack. Now about this time, the clouds began to cover the sky, and it began to rain a real cold rain that was running down the back of Jack's back and making a puddle in his underwear. Now about this time, Jack walked into a village. And in the middle of this village, there was an inn. That's the place I'd get something good to eat, somewhere nice and cozy to sleep, if they had any money. Jack didn't have any money at all. I'll try my luck anyhow. Jack walked up and knocked on the door. Hello? Hey, you have any work you need done here where I could chop wood, build fires, feed your animals? Boy, I sure wish you'd just give me something to eat. I don't know if you've noticed how wet it is out here. Hey, I don't remember seeing you around here before. Well, that's because I don't live around here. If I lived around here, I'd be smart enough to go home and get out of all this rain. Well, why did you leave home? I had to go out in the world to seek my fortune. Well, if it's fortune you want, you don't want to stay with me. I don't. See that big, gray, empty house up on the top of that hill? Yeah, I'm hungry. I'm not blind. Well, the mayor says that anybody who goes up in that house and spends the night can have the house and the land it sits on for their own. You mean I could have the whole thing? Mm-hmm. That's great, but what's the catch? Well, if you would ask the people who live around here, they'd tell you the house was haunted. Haunted? I've never seen anything that could scare me. Well, I hope you say that again in the morning. The man thought he ought to give Jack something to eat, but this wasn't the kind of man that would give away anything that cost any money. He had some beans cooking on the stove. That was all, just beans. He scooped the scoop into a little bucket of a thing, didn't even have a lid for it, and handed it out the door to Jack. Then I guess he got ashamed of himself for giving Jack so little to eat, because he got a big hunk of cornbread too, spread lots of butter on it, and handed it out the door to Jack also. Jack took the beans in one hand and the cornbread in the other, started up the hill towards that big, gray, empty-looking house. Since it'd been raining, it was slippery and slick, and Jack had to pick his way along real carefully just to make sure he didn't spill those beans. He knew if he did, he wouldn't get anything more to eat that night. When Jack got to the top of that hill, he hadn't spilled a single drop of those beans, and he was real proud of himself about it, too. He put the beans and the cornbread down on the doorstep and knocked. What am I thinking? If nobody lives here, who's going to come and let me in? So he put his hand on the doorknob, but jerked it back, because the doorknob was freezing cold. He put his hand on the door, but that was just as cold. I won't let that bother me. Jack pushed the door open. Everywhere Jack could see, everywhere he stepped, were cobwebs, shadows, and lots of dust. But before long, Jack found a fireplace and beside it a big stack of wood. Jack figured that must have been his lucky day. That quick, he built a fire in the fireplace, put the beans and the cornbread down beside it to get warm. Jack figured that when the butter melted in that cornbread, that it was going to taste pretty good. Jack was sitting down, thawing out his fingers, thinking about how he was the onlyest person in this big, gray, dark, damp, empty house, when he thought he heard a voice. It was sort of an old and low voice. It sounded like it was saying, I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna just fall and get it over with. And out of the chimney fell 2 human legs. They shook the ashes off of themselves and walked over to a nearby rocking chair. The chair began to rock back and forth. Hey, those beans are the only thing I got to eat tonight, so you better not spill them. But just then, Jack heard that same voice come from the chimney a second time, still saying, I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall and get it over with. Then out of the chimney fell a human body, shook the ashes off of itself, and started rolling over to the rocking chair where the legs were. When it got there, it attached itself up on top. The chair kept rocking back and forth and back and forth. Hey, as hungry as I am, you do not want to spill those beans. But just then, Jack heard that same voice come from the chimney a third time, still saying, I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. Can't you just say anything else? And out of the chimney fell 2 human arms. They shook the ashes off of themselves, attached themselves together at the fingertips, started rocking over to the rocking chair. When they got there, they attached themselves to the shoulders. The chair kept rocking back and forth and back and forth. Hey, that third time you nearly did spill those beans. But just then, that body jumped up so fast he nearly turned the chair over backwards, started opening cupboards, cabinets, drawers, throwing silverware, plates, napkins. Everything was going everywhere. What are you hunting for? My head. Well, when was the last time you saw it? Down in the cellar. Well, if you just sit down and stop all that running around, I'll go down there and get it for you. Running around the room like that, you're going to spill my beans for sure. So Jack walked over to the cellar door and pushed it open. It made a loud creak. Boy, it was dark and damp and musty smelling down there. Hey, you know what? I'll go down there and get that for you first thing tomorrow morning. But the body just yanked off one of its fingers, lit it in the fire just like a candle, and handed it to Jack. Thanks. Jack started walking down the cellar steps. At the bottom of the steps by the candlelight, he saw the head and picked it up in one hand. Started back up the stairs. At the top of the steps, Jack slowly handed the head out to the body, and the body slowly took the head, put it square on its shoulders as Jack blew the candle out. The big eyes on the head began to blink as they looked around the room. Jack, I've been haunting this house for 7 years, and with all the people who have come here trying to win my house and my land, you're the first one who ever tried to help me. Back when I was alive here, I buried all my gold down at the foot of those cellar steps, right where you found my head. You go down there and dig, and you'll find enough gold to make you rich for the rest of your days. And with that, the the body was gone. Thanks, I'll go down there and get that first thing tomorrow morning. And after Jack had eaten every bean in that bucket and every crumb of that cornbread and laid down for a good night's sleep, he walked down the cellar steps and began to dig. And before long, in an old wooden box, he found more money than he could spend in the rest of his life. The first thing Jack did was go and get his mom and bring her to live in the house. Last time I heard anything about them, except for Jack's mom's arthritis, they were getting along pretty good.
Thank you. For your listening pleasure, our next storyteller is Jarrett Nelson. He comes from Utah. He is in the 6th grade. And this Friday, I'm guessing he will be multitasking, listening to stories as well as checking the score on some football. Please welcome Jarrett Nelson.
There is a lot of material being published that tells kids like me how to cope with the terrible things that might happen to us. Like if I'm walking to school and a stranger drives up and offers me a ride and says he'll give me money, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to scream and run away. I'm glad I know this. I hope I never have to scream and run. But I'm glad I know what to do if something bad like that should happen to me. However, there's one problem that none of the books ever talk about. We never have special programs about it in school, and there aren't any public service announcements on TV. It's a serious problem, though, and widespread. I'm not the only one trying to cope without any help. Plenty of my friends are suffering too. The problem is this. How is a kid like me supposed to protect himself when his mom decides to go on a diet? It's terrible. It's a real shock when this happens, and nobody ever prepared me for it. One day, I was able to open our refrigerator and find cold fried chicken and chocolate pudding. But the next day, there was nothing but raw cauliflower and yogurt. Yuck! A growing boy could starve to death eating raw cauliflower and yogurt. I told my mom, I don't want you to go on a diet. I love you just the way you are. And she said, you're very sweet. Besides, I said, most of my friends' moms are fat too. I don't think I should have added that last part. She quit telling me how sweet I am and started doing sit-ups. Our cookie jar's empty. There aren't even any crumbs in the bottom that will stick to my finger if I lick it and rub it around on the inside. I asked, what good is a cookie jar if there are never any cookies in it? And I got some song and dance about reducing my tooth decay. Heck, my teeth are in good shape. It's my stomach that needs help. For dinner last night, we had baked fish, green beans, and a sliced tomato. I could have as much as I wanted, but who wants seconds of baked fish? We used to have a goodie drawer. It's just what the name implies, a drawer in the kitchen where we kept goodies. There were usually peanuts and often pretzels, and sometimes even a bag of candy bars. I love candy bars. I adore candy bars. At least I used to. Candy bars have been banned from our house ever since Mom put on her Navy suit and couldn't get the pants zipped. I suggested, let's buy a padlock and put it on the goodie drawer. And everyone but you, Mom, will know the combination. If you will buy the candy bars, I will lock them up for you. Do you think she would do it? Do you? What do you think? Well, she said, I don't want to ruin the kitchen drawer by putting a lock on it. But I think she doesn't want anyone else eating candy bars if she can't have any. It is painful to have my mother on a diet. My whole life has changed. Why don't the school counselors or the child welfare people do something to help? I'll bet thousands of kids are suffering just like me from candy bar withdrawal. As far as I'm concerned, you can forget all the instructions on what to do if someone tries to abduct me. Instead, tell me what to do when there's nothing in the house to eat.
Help! Send candy bars.
124 North Orem, Utah. Hungriest house to the left.
I heard all you kids groaning in the audience when he started, and I did too. That was my childhood. I didn't know what a candy bar was. We have a concluding speaker for you tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. And this is our senior member of the bunch. She is a senior in high school. She is from Florida. She is in the 12th grade. I said that. Her name is Makia Butler. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hi, my name is Makia Butler, and I will be telling an original story entitled Jamal and His Three Wishes. Once upon a time, in the deep, dark depths of New York City, lived a man named Jamal. Now, Jamal was unhappy with life because to him, neither God or anybody else has ever given him anything, and he hated himself for that. Now, one day, Jamal was walking down the street with a toolbox in hand, and all of a sudden, he heard a loud noise. And he looked to his left, and he looked to his right, but he didn't see anything. Jamal slowly turned around, and to his surprise, it was a 10-foot giant angel hovering over him, and he began to cry out, oh God, please do not kill me, for I will never, ever complain again. Now the angel was flattered. Jamal, I am not a god. I am simply an angel. But my God has been moved by your complaints, and he's willing to grant you 3 wishes. Now I must tell you, haste makes waste, and you do not want to be a fool. Now in a blink of an eye, the angel disappeared. Now Jamal was ecstatic. He could have everything he wanted. All the cars, all the clothes. He wanted to tell somebody. So he quickly rushed to his house to tell his wife, Sharon. He burst through the door and he called out to his wife, Sharon! There was no answer. He tried it again. Sharon! There was still no answer. You know what? Maybe she might hear us if we all called out. So help me. Here we go. Sharon! You guys are good. There was a slight reply in the distance. I'm coming, honey. Now, Sharon was confused. She wanted to see what all the commotion was about. So she quickly ran to the living room, and Jamal began to explain to her the 3 wishes and what was going on. Now, Sharon herself, she was flabbergasted. Oh, my goodness. I can have all the jewelry, all the pearls, all the diamonds that I want. Then she had another thought. You know what, Jamal? We should probably wait until the morning. So they decided to put the wish off until the morning. Now, later that evening, they were eating leftovers, of which were black-eyed peas, cornbread, collard greens, green beans. They were eating good. Now, Jamal, being as full as he was, leaned back in his chair, rubbed his big old belly, and you know what he said? He said, "I would wish for nothing more but a giant pork chop." Jamal has made his first wish. Now Sharon was furious. "Jamal, out of all the things you could have wished for, you wished for a measly pork chop? I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking." I know you weren't thinking, because if you were thinking, you know what? I wish that pork chop was just hanging from your nose so you would just shut up. Well, Jamal has now made his second wish. Now, if you can imagine how furious Sharon was the first time, you probably understand how livid she was, considering the fact there was a giant pork chop hanging from her nose. And she couldn't speak. And Jamal, he was happy about that. Now, Jamal began to think to himself, I could have all the riches, or I can have a wife with a pork chop for a nose. A light bulb went off. What if I try to get it off? So he went into his drawer, grabbed his scissors, grabbed his knife, and he began to cut. Snip, snip, snip. And then pull. And he cut. And he pulled. Oh. And he cut. And he pulled. Oh. I got it off, and there's no way it's coming back. Well, 10 seconds later, the pork chop grew to be 2 times the size it was the first time. So he had another idea. What if I just try to tug it off? Okay, that might work. So he began to pull. Oh, and he pulled again. Oh, and he pulled one more time. Oh, ow! It came off. I know it's not coming back. I know it. I got it from the root. I know it's not coming back. Well, 10 seconds later, the pork chop grew to be 4 times the size it was the first time. Now, Sharon and Jamal were running thin with their patience. Now, Jamal began to think, maybe I should leave the decision up to my wife for the first time. Now, Sharon began to wonder herself. I could have everything I wanted, all the cars, all the clothes, all the jewelry, but this nose. What would people say about me? Sharon was brought back to a place in her childhood where her mother would always tell her, "Sharon, if you can't be who you really are, what's the point of being anybody at all?" So she knew what she had to do. Jamal, making his last wish, a wise one, wished for his wife's nose back, and they lived happily ever after. Now, stories are told where this couple remains happy by thinking of the 3 wishes and what could have happened. It has made them strive and work hard in the city of New York. The end.
Thank you so much, Makia. That was a joy to witness and be there with those characters with you. Let's give all of our storytellers another big round of applause. And I would like to invite them to join me on the stage. Come, storytellers, join on stage. We have some awards for you. We would like to thank our partner and sponsor, NSN. They have donated the money to buy these beautiful awards for our storytellers tonight. And this is Shannon. Shannon Adams. Here, photo up. Okay. Ben Wilson. We have Daniela Sala. Jonathan Tubb. Nicholas Campos. Lillian Walker. Or Lily, and Lillian Gibb. Jarrett Nelson.